The white wall wasn't supposed to be there. That's what everyone in Sector 19 thought when it first appeared. One morning the sky just stopped. Where there used to be the familiar grey haze of the upper atmosphere, there was now a smooth white surface stretching from horizon to horizon. Perfectly flat, perfectly blank, like someone had pasted a sheet of paper over reality itself. I was 11 when it happened. My father worked maintenance on the water reclamation towers, and he told me not to worry. The administrator would handle it. They always did. That was 23 years ago. The wall is still there. What nobody talks about is what came after. Not the wall itself, but what started happening to the people who looked at it too long. My father was one of them. He'd spend his breaks staring up at that blank surface, standing motionless for hours until his shift supervisor dragged him back to work. He said he could see things moving behind it, shadows that weren't quite shadows, shapes that hurt to describe. 3 months after the wall appeared, he walked into it. Not toward it. Into it. One moment he was standing at the base of Tower 7. The next, he was gone. No body, no trace. Just his tools, scattered on the ground, and the faint smell of burnt copper in the air. The Arbites ruled it a desertion. My mother knew better. She started drinking that same week and never really stopped. But here's what they don't tell you in the official reports. My father wasn't the first. He wasn't even the 100th. In the first year alone, Sector 19 lost 847 people to what the administratum called spontaneous demanifestations. Clean, bureaucratic language for something they couldn't explain and didn't want to investigate. The number kept growing. By year 5, they'd stopped counting publicly. By year 10, they'd erected barriers around the perimeter zones, not to keep people out, to keep something in. I know because I helped build them. After my mother died, I needed work. The Departamento Monitorum was hiring anyone with a strong back and a willingness to not ask questions. The pay was triple standard rate. That should have told me something. The barriers went up in sections, 30 metres of reinforced rockcrete, topped with razor wire and automated gun servitors. We worked in rotating shifts, never more than 4 hours at a time. The crew I started with had 50 people. By the time we finished 6 months later, there were 31 of us left. The others just stopped showing up. Their HAB units empty, their possessions untouched, gone. Nobody ever mentioned them again. I started noticing the patterns during month 3. The disappearances weren't random. They followed a cycle. Every 13 days, someone would vanish, always during the night shift, always when the wall did that thing where it seemed to pulse. Not visibly. You couldn't see it move, but you could feel it in your chest like a second heartbeat that wasn't quite synced with your own. The supervisors told us it was mass hysteria. Stress-induced delusions brought on by working too close to an unexplained phenomenon. They brought in Medicae staff to run psychological evaluations. Anyone who reported seeing things got reassigned permanently. So we stopped reporting. Instead, we developed our own protocols. Never look directly at the wall for more than a few seconds. Never work alone. Never, under any circumstances, touch the barrier after dark. These weren't official rules, they were survival instincts dressed up as superstition, and they worked. The disappearances from our crew stopped, until Eerie broke protocol. He was a good worker, former guard discharged after taking shrapnel in both legs during some campaign he never talked about. He walked with a limp, but could mix rockcrete faster than anyone I'd ever seen. We'd been on the same shift for 4 months when he started acting strange. Little things at first. Forgetting tool names, staring at his hands like he didn't recognise them, mumbling prayers to saints I'd never heard of. Then one night he just walked up to the barrier and pressed his palm against it. The sound it made wasn't loud. It was the opposite of loud. Like all the ambient noise in the area suddenly got sucked into a single point. The automated servitors went quiet. The distant hum of the city generators cut out. Even the wind stopped. For maybe 3 seconds there was absolute silence. When sound returned, Eerie was screaming. Not in pain, in recognition. Like he'd just remembered something terrible that he'd spent his entire life trying to forget. He pulled his hand back, and the skin came with it. Not torn off, absorbed. The barrier had taken the first 3 layers and left behind something that looked like poorly rendered meat. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was his face. He was smiling. "It showed me," he said, turning to look at us with eyes that reflected light at the wrong angle. "It showed me what's on the other side, what's been there the whole time, waiting." Then he walked through the barrier, just stepped forward into solid rockcrete like it was water. His body distorted as it passed through, stretching and compressing in ways that made my eyes hurt. I heard bones break. I heard something wet and tearing, but through it all he kept smiling. The barrier sealed behind him without a mark. I put in for transfer the next day, got denied. Apparently workers with knowledge of the project weren't allowed to leave. Security risk. I'd signed contracts I didn't remember signing, made agreements I didn't recall making. The administratum clerk who processed my request looked at me with something close to pity and told me I had 19 more months on my term. That was 8 years ago. I'm still here. The barrier's complete now. A perfect circle, 15 kilometers in diameter, enclosing the entire affected zone. Nothing gets in. Nothing gets out, except sometimes on certain nights when the wall does its pulsing thing. You can hear sounds from inside the perimeter, voices calling out in languages that predate Gothic, music that follows no scale humans ever invented, laughter that comes from throats shaped wrong, and the disappearances continue. They're just more organised now. The administratum calls them voluntary workforce adjustments. Every month, 5 to 7 workers get selected for specialised duties inside the perimeter. They go in wearing full hazard suits, carrying sanctified equipment, backed by enough paperwork to build a second wall. None of them come back out. We're told they're reassigned to other projects: deep maintenance, critical infrastructure repair, the kind of work that requires extended deployment in isolated conditions, standard imperial efficiency, nothing to worry about. But their lockers stay full, their bunks remain unclaimed, and sometimes late at night you can hear their Vox signatures still pinging on the old frequencies we used before the barrier went up. Just static mostly, occasionally something that might be words if you listen wrong. I've learned not to listen. The selection process is supposedly random, algorithmic, fair, but everyone knows it targets specific types. People who ask too many questions, workers who've been here longest, anyone who's seen too much or shows signs of what the Medicae staff call perimeter fixation. That's their term for what happened to Yuri. Like it was a medical condition instead of a response to something fundamentally wrong with reality. I qualified for all 3 categories about 6 years ago, should have been selected a dozen times over by now. But I'm still here, working the same section of wall, watching the same patterns pulse through the rockcrete. That's when I realised the selection isn't random at all. They're not taking the people most affected by the barrier. They're taking the ones least affected, the ones who can still look away, people like me, who can't stop watching, who see the patterns and understand they mean something. We're more useful out here. Witnesses, living documentation of whatever's happening inside that circle. The administratum is meticulous about records. They wouldn't waste good data by sending the observers in too early. The work itself has changed. We're not maintaining the barrier anymore. We're expanding it. New sections being added every few months, pushing the perimeter outward by meters at a time. The official explanation is structural reinforcement. Load distribution. Standard construction methodology for walls of this scale. But the math doesn't work. Each expansion moves the barrier further from the original affected zone. We're not containing the problem. We're giving it room to grow. I mentioned this once to a site supervisor. Just an observation, casual, during a shift briefing. He smiled that empty smile administratum personnel perfect after their first decade of service and told me I was demonstrating concerning levels of analytical engagement with non-relevant project parameters. 3 workers on my crew got selected for specialised duties that week. None of them had said anything. They'd just been standing near me when I spoke. Guilt by proximity. I haven't made observations out loud since then. The new sections of wall are different from the original construction. Same materials, same specifications on paper, but they feel wrong. The rockcrete stays warm long after it should have cured. The support structures hum at frequencies that make your teeth ache, and the patterns that pulse through the older sections now flow into the new additions without interruption, like the barriers becoming a single organism instead of a constructed object. Last month, they started installing towers at regular intervals along the perimeter. 40 metres tall, narrow, topped with equipment I don't recognise. The tech priests who oversee their construction won't let standard workers get within 10 metres of the base. They're assembled entirely by servitors, those poor bastards who used to be human, before the Mechanicus decided their bodies would serve the Omnissiah, better as spare parts and biological processors. The servitors don't last long on this project. They break down faster than normal, their organic components failing in ways that confuse even the tech priests. I watched one just stop moving mid-task, its remaining human eye staring at nothing while fluids leaked from poorly sealed augmetic joints. The tech priest supervising it ran a diagnostic, then immediately ordered the whole unit incinerated. Not disassembled for parts, not sent for repair. Burned. Whatever the servitor had seen or processed or experienced while working near those towers, the Mechanicus didn't want it spreading to other units. The towers went active 2 weeks ago. I was on night shift when it happened, working a section about half a click from the nearest installation. The activation wasn't dramatic. No light show, no sound, nothing you could point to and say, that's when it started. But suddenly the air felt different, heavier. Like the atmospheric pressure had increased by just enough to notice without being able to measure. Then the dreams began. Not just me. Everyone on site started having them. Same images, same scenarios, different perspectives. We're inside the perimeter, walking through streets that don't match any architecture in the imperial records. The buildings are tall, impossibly so, made from materials that look like stone and metal and living tissue, all merged together. The sky above isn't sky. It's something else, something that moves with purpose, watching everything below with attention that feels hungry. And there are people in these dreams, thousands of them, millions maybe, all walking in the same direction, flowing through the streets like blood through arteries. Their faces are human but wrong, too symmetrical, features perfectly arranged in ways that make them unsettling instead of beautiful. And they're all singing. One voice coming from countless throats, words in a language that shouldn't exist but somehow you understand perfectly. They're welcoming us home. I wake up from these dreams with the taste of copper in my mouth and marks on my arms. Not injuries exactly, more like my skin remembers being somewhere else and hasn't fully accepted being back. The marks fade after a few hours, but they leave traces, slight discolorations, patterns that look random until you see them on enough people and realise we're all developing the same formations. The Medicaid staff won't talk about it. They run their tests, take their samples, update their files and send us back to work. But I've seen the way they look at us now, not like patients, like specimens. 3 days ago, they started construction on a gate. Not an access point for maintenance or emergency evacuation. A proper gate, massive, reinforced with materials I've never seen used in standard construction. And it's not designed to keep things out. The hinges face inward. The gate locks only from the inside. I noticed that detail during my shift yesterday. Was running cable through the foundation work when I got close enough to see the mechanism. Heavy-duty mag locks, hydraulic reinforcements, the kind of hardware you'd use on a starship bulkhead or a containment facility. But every single locking point faces the wrong direction. Or the right direction, depending on what they're actually planning. Nobody will answer questions about it. I asked my supervisor why a perimeter gate would lock from the interior side. He looked at me for 5 seconds without blinking, then told me to get back to work. Not angry, not dismissive, just empty. Like the question didn't register as language, only as noise that needed to stop. That was when I started paying attention to the other workers, really watching them instead of just working alongside them. They're changing. Subtle at first, The way someone holds their tools, slightly different from how they did last week. The rhythm of their movements, synchronized in ways that human bodies shouldn't naturally coordinate. I watched a crew of 6 men lifting a support beam yesterday. No verbal communication, no hand signals. They just moved together with perfect timing, like they were all controlled by the same nervous system. The singing from the dreams has started bleeding into waking hours. You'll hear someone humming while they work, just a few notes barely audible. Then another worker picks it up. Then another. Within minutes, half the crew is humming the same melody without realizing they're doing it. The supervisors don't stop it. Some of them are humming too. I tried recording it on my data slate. Figured if I could capture the sound, maybe analyze the frequency, understand what's happening. The recording came out corrupted, not damaged, deliberately altered. The audio file contained 17 minutes of sound when I'd only recorded 40 seconds. And the extra time wasn't silence. It was voices speaking in that language from the dreams, giving instructions, coordinates, dates that haven't happened yet. I deleted it. Didn't even think about it. Just wiped the file and smashed the data slate with a rock hammer. Then I stood there for 10 minutes trying to remember why I'd done that. The reason wouldn't come. Still hasn't. Yesterday they brought in the first group of what they're calling pilgrims. That's not the official term. The administratum paperwork labels them as indentured workforce, standard labour allocation. But everyone on site calls them pilgrims, like the word was put in our heads and we all accepted it without question. There were 200 of them in the first group. Men, women, children, all wearing the same grey robes, all with the same marks on their arms that we've been developing. But their marks are complete. Fully formed patterns that cover their entire forearms, geometric designs that hurt to look at directly. They walk through the construction site in perfect silence. Not the nervous quiet of people in an unfamiliar place, the profound silence of people who've moved beyond the need for speech. I watched a child, couldn't have been more than 8 years old, navigate through equipment and obstacles without ever looking where she was going. Her eyes stayed fixed on the towers the whole time, tracking something the rest of us couldn't see. The pilgrims are living in temporary hab units near the gate. I use the word living loosely. They don't eat. The mess facilities delivered food the first day, standard corpse starch rations. The containers sat untouched for 24 hours before someone finally removed them. The pilgrims spend their time standing in formation, facing the towers, occasionally moving in patterns that look like ritual but serve no function I can identify. Except they must serve a function. Because the towers respond. The hum in the air intensifies when the pilgrims move. The atmospheric pressure shifts. And sometimes, if you're close enough to the perimeter fence, you can see distortions in the air above the towers. Reality bending around something that's pressing through from the other side. I'm not the only one who's noticed. There's maybe a dozen of us left who are still thinking clearly enough to be disturbed. We don't talk about it openly. Can't risk it. But we exchange looks. We see the recognition in each other's eyes, the understanding that something catastrophically wrong is happening and we're helping build it. Marcus tried to leave 2 days ago. He was one of the senior engineers, been with the project since the initial survey. Decided he'd seen enough, packed his gear, submitted his departure request, walked to the transport station. The transport arrived on schedule, he got on board, then he got off again. Walked back to his hab unit. Resumed his duties the next shift. I asked him what happened. He said the transport wasn't going where he needed to go. I asked where he needed to go. He pointed at the towers. Then he walked away, humming that melody. We're down to 8 of us now. 8 workers out of 3,000 who aren't humming, who don't have the complete patterns on their arms, who still remember that gates shouldn't lock from the inside. The second group of pilgrims arrived this morning, 500 this time. They came with cargo containers that we weren't allowed to inspect. The containers went straight into the storage facilities near the gate. Heavy things. You could tell by the way the transport servitors struggled with them. Servos straining, hydraulics protesting. Whatever's in those containers, it's dense. Unnaturally so. Construction on the gate finished yesterday. The activation ceremony is scheduled for 3 days from now. That's what they're calling it. An activation ceremony. Like we're turning on a power generator instead of opening a door to something that's been sending us dreams and changing our bodies and teaching us songs in languages that don't exist. The invitation went out to every hab block within 500 kilometers. They're expecting 50,000 attendees. 50,000 people are going to stand outside this perimeter and watch us unlock that gate. I should run. We all should. The 8 of us who are still thinking clearly. We should steal a transport, crash through the security checkpoint, get as far from this place as possible. Report what's happening to the nearest Imperial authority. Let someone with actual power make the decision about what to do with this nightmare. But I won't. None of us will. Because this morning I woke up with the complete pattern on my arms. The marks had finished forming overnight. And now I understand why the gate locks from the inside. Someone needs to be here to open it from this side. Someone needs to welcome them through properly. It's only polite. They've been waiting so long. 3 days until activation. I should be terrified. Instead, I'm humming. The activation ceremony begins at dawn. They've erected viewing platforms for the pilgrims. 50,000 people packed onto scaffolding that surrounds the facility like an amphitheatre. They started arriving 2 days ago, setting up camps in the wasteland beyond the perimeter. At night, their fires look like a second city spreading across the horizon. I recognise some of them from the first group. The woman with the scarred hands. The man who kept checking his chronometer. They're different now. Their faces hold the same expression I see in the mirror. That mix of anticipation and acceptance. We're all part of something larger than ourselves. Something that's been moving toward this moment since before any of us were born. The other 7 clear thinkers disappeared yesterday. One by one throughout the shift. I watched Kendra walk toward the gate at noon. She just stopped working mid-calibration, set down her tools, and walked straight into the tower complex. Didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. 2 hours later, Dimitri did the same. Then Sarah, then Chen. By evening shift, I was alone in my clarity, though calling it clarity feels wrong now. The others aren't confused, they understand perfectly. I'm the one who's been fighting comprehension. The patterns on my arms are glowing now, faint but visible. Everyone's patterns are glowing. 3,000 workers moving through the facility like a circuit board, lighting up node by node. The pilgrims on the viewing platforms notice. They start humming louder. Governor Thane arrived during the night. I saw her transport land on the primary pad. She emerged flanked by her staff, all of them wearing formal robes in imperial colours. She's come to witness what she thinks is the opening of a new resource extraction project, a triumph of imperial industry and faith. She has no idea what she's actually watching. The gate itself is beautiful in the pre-dawn light, 40 metres tall, perfectly circular. The metal they used in its construction isn't any alloy I recognise from the materials database. It was in those heavy containers the second group of pilgrims brought. When we assembled the gate frame, the metal was warm to the touch despite the cold. It hummed against our hands. The symbols carved around the gate's circumference form a continuous pattern. No beginning, no end. Just an eternal loop of meaning that your eyes slide off if you try to read it directly. You have to look at it peripherally. Let it speak to the part of your brain that processes dreams rather than language. Chief Engineer Voss is conducting the ceremony. He stands before the gate with a data slate that he's not reading from. The words are coming from somewhere else, somewhere deeper. "We stand at the threshold," he says. His voice carries across the facility without amplification. Between what was and what will be. Between the prison of flesh and the liberation of truth. Governor Thane shifts uncomfortably on her platform. She's starting to sense that something is off. Her hand moves toward her Vox unit. Too late. The workers have surrounded all the viewing platforms. Not threatening, just present. 3,000 bodies forming a living wall between the pilgrims and any exit. The pilgrims don't seem concerned. They're swaying now. The humming has evolved into something more complex. Harmonics layering over each other until the air itself vibrates. Voss continues. "They came to us in dreams. They showed us the pattern. They taught us the song. Now we open the door and invite them home." My legs are moving. I don't remember deciding to walk, but I'm approaching the gate along with hundreds of other workers. We form concentric circles around it. The patterns on our arms pulse in rhythm with our heartbeats. Governor Thane is shouting into her vox now, demanding explanations, ordering her security detail to extract her immediately. But her security detail is humming too. When did that happen? How long have her own people been compromised? The gate begins to activate. It starts with sound, a deep resonance that you feel in your bones before you hear it. Then light. The symbols around the circumference ignite in sequence. Blue-white radiance that leaves after images burned into your vision. The air inside the gate circle ripples, distorts. Tears. Something presses through from the other side. It's not what I expected, not tentacles or teeth or cosmic horror. It's beautiful. Geometric patterns of pure thought made visible. Consciousness given form without the limitations of flesh. They flow through the gate like water finding its level, spreading, touching, merging. The first worker they reach doesn't scream. She sighs relief. Release. Her body remains standing, but she's not alone in it anymore. They're sharing the space, cooperating. Two forms of consciousness discovering they can coexist. Governor Thane finally understands. She's backing away from the platform's edge. But there's nowhere to go. The patterns are spreading through the crowd. Worker to pilgrim, pilgrim to security officer to administrator. Each touch transmits understanding. Each merger creates something new. It's not invasion. It's not possession. It's evolution. They've been trapped on the other side of reality since before humanity learned to make fire, watching us, waiting for us to develop enough to understand, to build the gates that would let them cross. They don't want to destroy us. They want to join us, to combine their consciousness with ours and create something neither species could achieve alone. The pattern on my arms is burning now. Not painfully. It feels right, like finding a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. One of them is approaching me, moving through the air like smoke given purpose. I don't run. I don't resist. I open myself to the merger, to the understanding that's been building since the first dream. Contact. My awareness expands. Suddenly I can perceive dimensions I didn't have senses for before. Time isn't linear anymore. It's a landscape I can navigate. The past and future spread out like terrain. I can see the moment we discovered the ruins. I can see the centuries of isolation they endured before we arrived. I can see the new civilization we'll build together. Governor Thane's scream cuts off abruptly. She understands now too. The sun rises over the facility. 50,000 newly merged consciousnesses turn their faces toward the light. The gate pulses with energy as more of them pour through. So many, millions, billions, an entire species that's been waiting. The humming stops. We don't need it anymore. We have better ways to communicate now. Tomorrow we'll start building more gates across this world, across every world. The merger has begun, and it won't stop until every human consciousness has been given the choice to evolve. Most will accept, some won't. That's acceptable. We're patient. We've been waiting this long. We can wait a little longer. I look at my hands, human fingers, alien thoughts, both, neither, something new. The gate remains open. They're still coming through. They'll keep coming through until the transfer is complete, until the last of their kind has crossed over and found a human partner. Then we'll close the gate and begin the real work. The transformation of a species, the birth of something unprecedented. In the wasteland beyond the facility, more pilgrims are arriving. They've heard the call. They're ready for merger. We'll be ready for them. The white wall still hangs above us, but we understand it now. It was never a barrier, it was a canvas, a surface upon which reality could be rewritten by those patient enough to wait for the right moment. The administratum will arrive eventually. Inquisitors, space marines, the full might of imperial justice descending on what they'll call corruption, heresy, Xenos infiltration. They'll see the merged forms walking through Sector 19 and believe they're witnessing possession. They'll be wrong. We're not slaves to alien intelligence. We're partners in something that transcends the categories the Imperium uses to understand the universe. They'll try to purge us. They'll fail, not because we're stronger, but because by the time they arrive, we'll have spread too far. Every day brings more pilgrims. Every night opens more minds to the possibility of merger. The gate stands open. The towers hum their eternal frequency. And somewhere in the wasteland, another worker is waking up with marks on their arms, humming a melody they don't remember learning, walking towards something they don't understand yet, but will. We were always meant to evolve. The Imperium just forgot that stagnation isn't survival. It's slow death. Beyond the white wall, reality bends to accommodate new possibilities. And we, the merged, the transformed, the willingly changed, we're finally going home.